Hello, and welcome back to the Everyday English Podcast. This is the place where we take real conversations, slow them down, and break them down so you can actually use them in your daily life. Whether you are listening on your morning commute, washing the dishes, or just taking a break with a cup of coffee, I am so happy you are here. Today, we have a very special episode because we are tackling one of the biggest frustrations for intermediate learners. You know the words, you know the grammar rules in your textbook, but the moment you try to tell a story about your own life, everything gets messy.
It is great to be here, and you are absolutely right. I hear this from students all the time. They start telling a story, maybe about their last holiday or a funny thing that happened at work, and suddenly they just freeze. They stop speaking because they are trying to decide between 3 or 4 different verb tenses. They are thinking, should I say I was working, or I worked, or I had worked? It creates this mental traffic jam, and the story just stops.
Exactly. We call this the timeline trap. When you are just chatting, you don't have time to draw a grammar chart in your head. You need a feeling, a natural instinct for which tense goes where. So today, we are not just going to list grammar rules. We are going to give you a framework. Think of it as a template or a recipe. If you follow this 3-step recipe, you will be able to tell any story about your past smoothly and confidently.
I love the idea of a recipe. It makes it sound much less scary. Instead of worrying about every single verb, you just need to know which ingredient to add first, second, and third. So, where do we start? If I want to tell you about the time I decided to move to a new city, or the time I had a terrible job interview, what is the first step?
The first step is what we call setting the scene. Imagine you are a movie director. Before the action starts, before the actors start running or fighting or kissing, you have to show the audience where they are. Is it raining? Is the sun shining? Are people walking around? In English grammar, we use a specific tense to paint this background picture. We use the past continuous.
The past continuous. That is the one with the ing ending, right? Like was doing or were going?
That is the one. We use the verb to be in the past, so was or were, plus the verb with ing. I was living, they were studying, the sun was shining. This tense tells the listener that this action was happening over a period of time. It was the background activity. It was not finished. It was just in progress.
So if I want to tell a story about meeting my best friend, I shouldn't start by saying, I met him. That feels a bit abrupt. It feels like the story is over before it began.
Exactly. It is too fast. To make it a real story, you need to put me in the moment. You need to set the scene. So instead of just saying I met him, you might say, back in 2010, I was living in London. I was working at a small coffee shop in the city center. Do you see how that feels different?
Yes, I can feel the difference. When you say I was living in London and I was working at a coffee shop, I can imagine the scene. I am picturing you there. It feels like the camera is panning across the city. Nothing dramatic has happened yet, but I know the context.
Right. And this is where a lot of learners make their first mistake. They rush into the action too quickly. They use the past simple too early. They say, I lived in London and I met a friend. It is grammatically correct, but it sounds flat. It sounds like a list of facts, not a story. If you want to engage people, if you want them to listen to you, use the past continuous to stretch out that beginning. Give us the atmosphere.
Can we try another example? Let's say I want to tell a story about a time I broke my leg. That is a classic story. How would I set the scene for that?
Okay, let's think about what was happening around you before the accident. You're probably doing something active. So you wouldn't start with, I broke my leg. You would start with the background. Maybe it was a beautiful winter day. The sun was shining, and I was skiing down the mountain with my brother.
Perfect. The sun was shining. I was skiing. That is the background. We are in the middle of the action, but the main event hasn't happened yet. This is step 1 of our framework. Set the scene with the past continuous.
Precisely. Now, once you have painted that picture, you are ready for step 2. This is where the story actually happens. This is the main event. For this, we switch to the past simple.
The past simple is the most common narrative tense, isn't it? It is just the standard past form. I walked, I saw, I went, I stopped.
Yes, if the past continuous is the long, wavy line in the background, the past simple is the sharp X that interrupts it. It is the specific action that happens at a specific moment. It moves the story forward. So, going back to my London example, I was working at a coffee shop, that is the background, when suddenly a man walked in and dropped his books.
Okay, I see the shift. I was working is the long action. Walked in and dropped are the short actions. They interrupt the background.
Exactly. And notice that we often link these two parts with words like when or while. I was working when he walked in, or while I was working, he walked in. This combination is the heartbeat of English storytelling. Continuous for the vibe, simple for the action.
I think students often get confused here because they try to keep using the continuous form. I hear people say things like, I was working and then a man was coming in. That sounds wrong, doesn't it?
It sounds very unnatural. If you say a man was coming in, it sounds like he was in the process of entering through the door in slow motion, and maybe he never actually finished coming in. If you want to say he entered the room, boom, it's done. You must use the past simple. He came in, he walked in.
So for the main events, the things that happen one after another, we stick to the past simple. He walked in, he dropped his books, I helped him pick them up. We started talking.
Perfect. Think of it like beads on a string. Each past simple verb is a bead. First this happened, then this happened, then this happened. Keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate the main action. This is step 2. The main event uses past simple.
So far, this seems manageable. Step 1, set the scene with past continuous. Step 2, tell the action with past simple. But we have a third step in this framework, and I think this is the one that scares people the most. It is the dreaded past perfect.
The past perfect. This is the one that makes people sweat. They hear words like had done, or had gone, or had seen, and they panic. But actually, in storytelling, the past perfect has a very specific, very useful job. We call step 3 the flashback.
The flashback? Like in a movie when the character remembers something from their childhood?
Exactly like that. Sometimes, when you are telling a story, you need to explain something that happened before your story started. You are already in the past, right? You are telling me about yesterday or last year. But sometimes you need to go even further back to give context. That is the timeline before the timeline. That is where we use the past perfect.
Let's go back to your London coffee shop story to see how this works. You were working, the man walked in. That is our timeline so far. Where does the past perfect fit in?
Well, imagine I want to tell you why this moment was special. Maybe the man who walked in was someone famous or someone I knew from school. I need to give you that context. So I might say, I was working in the coffee shop when a man walked in. I recognized him immediately because I had seen his face in a magazine.
Ah, I see. I had seen. You saw his face in the magazine before he walked into the shop.
Right. If I just said I saw his face in a magazine, it might sound like I saw the magazine right there in the shop at that moment. But I want to tell you that the seeing of the magazine happened days or weeks earlier. It is old news. It is the history of the history. That is why we use had seen.
This is really the key to deep storytelling, isn't it? It explains the why behind the actions. Let's look at the skiing example. The sun was shining, I was skiing, that is background. Suddenly, I hit a patch of ice and fell, that is action. Now add a flashback.
Okay, so I fell and broke my leg. It was terrifying because I had never broken a bone before.
That is a perfect example. I had never broken a bone before. That covers your whole life up until that moment on the mountain.
Exactly, and this creates emotion. If I just say I broke my leg, it is a fact. If I say I broke my leg and I was scared because I had never been in a hospital, now you understand my feelings. You understand the weight of the situation. The past perfect gives your story depth.
But there is a warning here, isn't there? I sometimes hear students who discover the past perfect and then they fall in love with it too much. They start using it for everything.
Oh, yes, the over-perfecters. This is a very common phase. Once you learn the grammar rule, you want to show it off. So you hear sentences like, I had woken up, and then I had brushed my teeth, and then I had eaten breakfast.
That sounds exhausting. It sounds like you're carrying a heavy backpack through the sentence.
It does. It is grammatically unnecessary and stylistically heavy. Remember the rule for step 2. The main event uses past simple. For a sequence of actions, I woke up, I brushed my teeth, I ate breakfast, just use past simple. Only use the past perfect when you need to jump backwards out of the sequence to explain something earlier.
So save the past perfect for the special context. Don't use it for the main list of actions.
Precisely. Think of the past perfect like a spice, like chili flakes. A little bit adds amazing flavor and depth. Too much ruins the dish. Use it once or twice in your story to give context, usually with words like because or although. I was hungry because I hadn't eaten all day. That is perfect.
Okay, I think we have our 3 components. Step 1, past continuous for the background. Step 2, past simple for the main actions. Step 3, past perfect for the flashback or context. Shall we try to put this all together in a full story? I think hearing it flow naturally will really help everyone listening.
That is a great idea. I am going to tell a short story about a career change. This is a very common topic for our listeners who might be learning English for their jobs. I want you to listen closely and try to identify the 3 steps as I speak. Are you ready?
I am ready. Let's hear it.
Okay, here we go. About 5 years ago, I was working as an accountant for a big firm in New York. I was making good money, but I wasn't feeling very happy. I was working long hours, and I was getting really tired. One day, my boss called me into his office. He offered me a promotion. It was a huge opportunity, but surprisingly, I said no. I quit my job right there. I knew it was a risky decision because I hadn't saved much money yet. Also, I hadn't told my wife that I was thinking about quitting, but I knew I needed a change.
Wow, that is a great story, and it is a perfect example of the framework. Let's break it down really quickly for the listeners.
Sure. How did it start?
You started with the background. I was working, I was making good money, I was working long hours. That is all past continuous. It sets the scene. We know what your life looked like before the drama happened.
Exactly. I am painting the picture of my life. And then?
Then came the interruption. One day, my boss called me, past simple. He offered me a promotion, past simple. I said no, past simple. I quit, past simple. That is the chain of events. Bam, bam, bam.
And finally, the context.
Yes, the flashbacks. You explained why it was risky. I hadn't saved much money. That refers to the time before you quit. And I hadn't told my wife. That refers to the weeks or months leading up to that meeting.
Perfect. You see how the past perfect, hadn't saved, hadn't told, explains the tension in the moment. It tells you why quitting was such a big deal. Without those past perfect sentences, you don't understand the risk.
It really does fit together like a puzzle. When you analyze it like this, it seems so logical. But using it in conversation takes practice, doesn't it?
It absolutely takes practice. Understanding the logic is the first step, but training your mouth to produce the sounds is the second step. That is why we always encourage you to shadow these examples. Shadowing means repeating what you hear immediately after you hear it, trying to match the speed and the rhythm.
Speaking of practice, I noticed something interesting about how you pronounce these tenses. When you say I was working, you don't say I was working. The word was is very weak.
That is a very important point for sounding natural. In the past continuous, the verb to be, was or were, is usually unstressed. We swallow it a little bit. We don't say I was working. We say I was working. It sounds like was. I was working. She was calling.
And the same thing happens with the past perfect, right? I had eaten. You don't usually say the full word had.
Right. We almost always contract it. I'd eaten, I'd seen, I'd gone. Or if it is negative, I hadn't. The stress is on the main verb, not the helper verb. So it is I'd seen him, not I had seen him.
This is why listening practice is so crucial. If you are only reading English, you see I had seen and you think both words are equal. But when you listen to this podcast, you hear the rhythm. I'd seen. It flows.
And that rhythm helps you with the grammar. If you get the rhythm right, the grammar often follows. If you are one of our listeners who want to go deeper into this, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We have a lot more episodes coming up where we break down specific pronunciation tips like this that make your grammar sound invisible and natural.
I want to go back to the idea of the timeline trap we talked about at the beginning. One thing that helps me is visualizing the timeline, physically. Do you ever tell students to use your hands?
All the time. If you are watching this on video, or if you can just imagine it, hold your hands out. Use your left hand to show the background. Move it in a wavy line. That is your I was working. Then use your right hand to do a chop. That is your he walked in. And then point your thumb backwards over your shoulder. That is your I had seen.
I love that. Wavy hand, chop, thumb back. Continuous, simple, perfect. It connects the physical sensation with the grammar concept.
It really helps. English is not just in your brain, it is in your body. So let's talk about a few common situations where our listeners can use this immediately. We talked about a job interview or talking about a career. What about a travel story? Everyone loves telling travel stories.
Oh, travel is the best for this. Let's construct one right now. Step 1, background. We were traveling through Italy. Step 2, action. We missed our train. Step 3, flashback. We had lost our tickets.
Perfect. We were traveling through Italy, scenery. We missed the train, disaster, because we had lost our tickets. Reason. It is a complete mini story in 3 sentences.
What about a relationship story? Maybe a first date?
Okay, let's try. Step 1, I was waiting at the restaurant. Step 2, she arrived 20 minutes late. Step 3, she had gone to the wrong location.
There it is again. It works for everything. I was waiting, background. She arrived, action. She had gone, explanation of what happened before.
You know, looking at it this way, it makes me realize that we actually use the past perfect quite a lot when we are making excuses or explaining mistakes. I was late because I had overslept. I didn't call because I had lost my phone.
That is true. If you want to be good at making excuses in English, you need the past perfect. It is the tense of, it wasn't my fault, this other thing happened before.
So, if you are a person who is often late, this is the most important grammar lesson of your life. But seriously, this framework gives you control. That is what we want for you. We want you to feel in control of your story. When you start speaking, you shouldn't feel like you're stepping off a cliff. You should feel like you have a map.
And the map is simple. Step 1, set the scene, past continuous. Step 2, tell the action, past simple. Step 3, give the context, past perfect. If you stick to this order, you really can't go wrong.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to address one more thing. Sometimes students ask me, do I have to use all 3? Can I tell a story with just past simple?
That is a good question. Can you?
Technically, yes. You can say, I lived in London, I worked in a coffee shop, a man walked in, I recognized him, I saw him in a magazine. People will understand you. It is not wrong. But it is choppy. It sounds a bit like a robot.
It lacks color. It lacks texture.
Exactly. Using the mix of tenses is what makes you sound fluent. It shows you understand the relationship between events. It shows you are comfortable with the flow of time. So don't just settle for being correct. Aim for being expressive.
And don't be afraid to make mistakes while you're practicing this. Maybe you will use a past continuous when you should have used a past simple. That is okay. The more you try to use the framework, the more natural it will become.
Absolutely. The goal is communication, not perfection. But with this framework, you are going to get a lot closer to perfection.
So, what is the challenge for this week? We always like to give our listeners something practical to do.
I have a very specific challenge for you today. I want you to think of one significant event in your life. It could be a big move, like my story. It could be a time you met someone special. It could even be a funny mistake you made.
Okay, so pick one memory.
Pick one memory, and I want you to write just 3 sentences about it. I don't want a whole essay, just 3 sentences. Sentence 1, use the past continuous to set the scene. What were you doing? I was living in. I was walking. Sentence 2, use the past simple to say what happened. I met. I found. I broke. Sentence 3, use the past perfect to explain the context or the backstory. I had never. I had always wanted.
3 sentences. Background, action, flashback. That sounds doable.
It is very doable. And once you write them, read them out loud. Listen to the rhythm. Check if you are contracting the had to I'd. Check if you are unstressed on the was. If you can do this with 3 sentences, you can do it with a 10-minute story. It is the same building blocks.
And if you are feeling brave, put those 3 sentences in the comments section if you're watching this on YouTube, or share them with a study partner. Seeing other people's examples is a great way to learn.
Yes, please do share them. I love reading your stories. It is amazing how much life experience we have in this community. We have people from all over the world with incredible stories to tell. We just want to give you the tools to tell them. This has been a really useful deep dive. I feel like I have refreshed my own grammar just by talking about it. It is always good to remember that even native speakers use these structures instinctively, and by analyzing them, we can help you build that same instinct.
That is the goal. We want you to stop translating and start feeling the language. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Everyday English Podcast. We hope this framework helps you unlock some of those stories you have been waiting to tell. Remember, your English journey is a marathon, not a sprint. But having the right map makes the run a lot easier.
Absolutely. Keep practicing, keep listening, and don't be afraid to make those wavy hand movements when you practice your past continuous.
Yes, embrace the hand gestures. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss our next lesson. We are going to be talking about more real-life conversation skills soon. Until then, take care, happy studying, and see you next time.
Bye, everyone.